ongoing war in Ambazonia, where survival is the daily battle for millions, a new insidious concern has begun to creep into the very fabric of Ambazonian society. While the region continues to fight for its freedom and territorial integrity, we see that the next threat seems to be rooted with immorality. Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. As the war drags on, the youths of Ambazonia find themselves caught between the horrors of conflict and a rapidly shifting moral landscape. With the breakdown of traditional societal structures, the weakening of institutions, and the daily pressures of survival, young people are increasingly exposed to behaviors that actually threaten the value of honor, respect, and community that have long been the bedrock of Ambazonian society. But this moral decline, fueled by a combination of war-induced trauma, lack of access to education, and the allure of violence and quick gains, presents a challenge that goes beyond military strategy or political negotiations. In today's broadcast, we turn our attention not just to the current tragedies and struggles of Ambazonia, but to the future of its people, the very youths who will inherit the war-torn land. From the abduction of community leaders, including the ongoing captivity of Ndong Gilbert, to the growing despair amongst farmers hit by unusual weather patterns, the atmosphere in Ambazonia remains one of uncertainty and tension. While these incidents highlight the persistence of violence and insecurity, they also underscore the deeper challenges that threaten the stability of the society at large. Today's report delves into the multifaceted crisis facing Ambazonia, where the immediate threats of war and compounded by moral, social, and economic fractures. As we witness the destruction of crops in Bafut, the continued kidnapping of officials, and the rising resentment over extortion schemes, we are reminded that the war's toll extends far beyond the battlefield. Ambazonia is at a crossroad, facing not only the challenge of survival, but the imperative to preserve its values and rebuild a future for the next generation amidst the growing darkness. With the struggles of the present coming into sharper focus, questions arise about what is being done to guide the youth and restore order in a land where survival, not morals, often takes center stage. What will become of Ambazonia if the next generation grows up with their foundations eroded, their aspirations stunted, and their identities lost in the fog of war? Today we seek to explore these pressing concerns and look for solutions that could help steer Ambazonia away from a future overshadowed by moral decay. We'll get on to the prime headlines. And these are the prime headlines on Undaunted tonight. We see tensions and fear deepen as Menchum education delegate remains in captivity. Community outrage in Bokwai village over allegations of sexual abuse by a leader. We see Hailstorm devastating farmlands in the heart of Ambazonia, as well as Extortion rocking Nkwen, as we see its Colonial quarter heads bleeding farmers dry. A La Republic police officer unalive with another wounded in gunfire exchange at hospital roundabout on Wednesday, April 9th. And on the African scene, Algeria bans flights to Mali amid rising tensions. More on the global scene, Ukraine captures 2 Chinese nationals fighting for Russia. Well, let's get the reports in detail. As the conflict in southern Cameroon's Ambazonia rages on, the abduction of public officials is becoming an unsettling norm. We see fueled fear, mistrust, and further destabilizing already fragile communities. The latest victim of this growing trend is Undaunted, the divisional delegate, the Colonial divisional delegate of basic education for Menchum County, whose disappearance sent shockwaves through the region. His kidnap not only exposes the vulnerability of civil servants on the front lines of governance, but also reflects the deepening crisis of law and order in areas gripped by the nearly decade-long war. Now, this is where we'll begin the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. We're seeing a disturbing development that underscores the persistent climate of fear and insecurity across the embattled territory of Ambazonia. Undaunted, the Colonial divisional delegate of basic education for Menchum County, remains in captivity 4 days after his abduction. Mr. Undaunted was forcefully taken from his home in Ware village on the night of April 5th, 2025 by unidentified gunmen. Eyewitnesses in the community recounted hearing heavy gunfires that night, followed by a chilling silence. It wasn't until daylight broke that the extent of the incident became known. Gunshots at night took cover. It was only in the morning that we learned the administrator was kidnapped. Now, this was a resident of Way who requested anonymity, stating this. Undaunted had been living in Way while carrying out his duties in Menchum's administrative capital. Since his abduction, no official statement had been issued by authorities. No official statement was issued. But sources close to the matter revealed that the kidnappers were demanding a ransom of 10 million francs CFA for his release. As the community grapples with the shock, whispers of complicity has begun to swirl. Some sources allege that a few commercial bike riders in Ware may have played a role in facilitating the kidnapping, a claim that has sparked outrage amongst locals, tensions arising, with some community members vowing to expose anyone collaborating with armed actors to undermine peace and public order. But the question continues to linger. How can peace and order reign when Ambazonia is still under war? Well, this incident comes amongst the backdrop of a broader armed conflict between Ambazonia and the Cameroonian regime. Now in its 9th year, administrators, teachers, health workers, and civilians continue to be caught in this crossfire of war that has displaced hundreds of thousands and eroded trust between communities and institutions. Well, looking at the story, we see that after 5 days of captivity, only yesterday was Undaunted release, and the story behind his release is yet to be known. But we'll get further details on that in a subsequent bulletin here on Undaunted. But away from the kidnap of Undaunted, we get into the next report. We see that indeed moral decadence has been one of the recent trends amongst Ambazonia, something that is far away from the Ambazonian culture. In a rather shocking report, a man known as Mola has been arrested in Bokwai village, Boya, following alarming allegations of luring and abusing young boys. The situation escalated after a 15-year-old victim recorded their conversation. The community was alarmed and took justice into their hands. The culprit was severely beaten and was only rescued by Colonial forces. While in Bokwai village, located in the Atlantic zone of Fako, a man commonly referred to as Mola faced serious allegations of sexually abusing young boys. Reports indicate that Mola has been involved in inappropriate behaviors with several minors before this time. The situation came to light when a 15-year-old boy, who is also a footballer, recorded his conversation with the said Mola. While Mola spoke about his past sexual encounters and suggested that if the boy followed his example, he might succeed in his football career. Now, that was the advice that was heard on the recorded tape from this young 15-year-old boy. Now, after learning about this conversation, the villagers were understandably upset and confronted Mullah at his home. When emotions ran high, he was physically attacked until police arrived. Colonial police arrived to intervene and protect him from further harm by the community. While community members have shared that this is not the first time Mullah has been accused of such behavior, but apparently he had gone scot-free every other time until a hardcore evidence was held against him. The allegations suggest he had previously targeted many boys, including children, from his own family. Despite facing legal troubles before, connections to colonial government officials in his family have allowed him to avoid the consequences of his actions. Mullah holds significant roles in the village. He is a quarterhead, a colonial quarterhead, and an elder in the local church. This has intensified the community's anger as many feel betrayed by someone in a leadership position. During a village council meeting called to discuss the situation, Mullah was given a chance to apologize. However, his response did not sit well with the community. While he expressed regret, many felt his apology was very insincere and unconvincing. Meanwhile, a social worker present at the meeting announced plans to file formal charges against Mullah. Additionally, the women of the village have stated their intentions to banish him from the community even yesterday. Well, while we hope to delve into this deeper, looking at the fact that this is not the first time such a case of moral decadence has been seen in the news, especially in Ambazonia, we're going to get into other reports and hope that by weekend on Ambazonia this week, we'll delve into these topics and these trends even deeper. But away from the moral decadence ongoing in Ambazonia, as has been seen, we see nature's blow to baffoot. In the land of Ambazonia, while fertile soil and rich green landscapes have long sustained generations of farmers, agriculture is more than just a way of life. It is a symbol of survival, dignity, and heritage. From the misty hills of Bafut to the sweeping valleys of Lebialem, farming has been the heartbeat of countless families and communities. Yet this age-old livelihood continues to face relentless attacks, from the bullets of war to the cruelty of nature. While the ongoing conflict has driven many from their lands and disrupted farming cycles, a new and unexpected threat has emerged from the skies, further compounding the hardship of those who still cling to the soil with hope. While in Bafut Menchum County, located in the Midland zone of Ambazonia, a recent and unusual hailstorm has brought devastation to local farmers. The storm, marked by the fall of heavy hailstone without accompanying rainfall, struck the Njimbi, Mfoya, and Insane communities, wreaking havoc on farmlands and destroying vital crops. This rare climatic event could not have come at a worse time, already burdened by the challenges of insecurity and limited access to farming inputs. Local farmers now find themselves staring at fields of shattered stems, broken leaves, and harvests lost overnight. The hailstorm has left many families reeling from sudden agricultural losses, with some speaking of entire plots being wiped out in minutes. "This is the worst we've seen in years," said a local farmer in Njimbi. He says, "Our maize, our vegetables, everything we worked for is gone. And there was no rain, only ice from the sky." Local agricultural authorities have stepped in, urging affected farmers to properly assess the damage and report their losses. Well, they believe that this is the first step towards coordinating support and potentially accessing external aid. In the meantime, the spirit of solidarity is beginning to shine through amidst the tragedy. Community leaders are encouraging residents to share resources, tools, and knowledge that could ease recovery efforts. Some villages have begun pooling seeds and manpower to salvage what little can still be replanted. Now, while full assessment of the damage are still underway, the storm serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of farming communities in a region already destabilized by war. Agricultural officers are also advising farmers to remain alert, monitor weather reports closely, and take preventive measures to cushion future shocks. Well, in Ambazonia, the land has always given generously. Sadly, we get reports the people of Bafu are left with a difficult questions. Who protects the land when nature turns against it? Oh well, on to the next concern. In Ambazonia, still on the home front, we have reports that talks about, first of all, the Ambazonian State Army, and even before that we have reports that talk about the state of extortion, how La Republique is bringing their bribery into the moral fabric of Ambazonia. Cameroon's long-standing culture of corruption, the moral fabric of some quarters in Ambazonia, is beginning to show signs of rot. A disturbing new report by Makati News revealed that in Nkwen local authority quarters, quarter heads and council members are allegedly orchestrating a quiet extortion scheme that preys on non-indigenous farmers, many of whom are internally displaced persons. This subtle infiltration of La Republique's coercive tactics into the governance of Ambazonian quarters not only threatens the livelihood of innocent settlers, but also raises questions about the ethical trajectory of community leadership in the braided zones. Now, according to findings from Mbelewa quarter in Nkwen, settlers, specifically non-Nkwen indigenes, are being systematically extorted under the guise of traditional injunctions. Quarter heads, reportedly in collusion with their council members, are placing bans on farm access, claiming that affected farmers have failed to pay so-called development fees. The result, a group of already marginalized individuals now find itself unable to access the very land it relies on for survival. 3 women interviewed by Makati News shared how they've been repeatedly coerced into paying 5,000 francs CFAs to lift the injunctions placed on their farmlands. Even more alarming is the sudden demand for a staggering 280,000 francs CFAs as development fees, a fee traditionally tied to land acquisition for construction, not subsistence farming. Now, the women, visibly frustrated, emphasized that they had already been paying 5,000 francs CFAs annually for 3 years without ever receiving official receipts. The discriminatory nature of this practice is evident. Only non-Nkwen indigenes are subjected to these financial demands. Native Nkwen farmers are allowed unrestricted access to their land. This has sparked accusations of systemic bias and targeted economic sabotage against settlers, many of whom were forced to flee violence and conflict in their own villages, only to be met with further marginalization in their host communities. Well, Makati News reports that the affected farmers have appealed to the fund of Nkwen, his royal nobility, calling for urgent intervention to restore fairness and justice. However, attempts to reach the Mbelewa quarter head for clarification or rebuttal have so far been unsuccessful, while as Ambazonia continues to fight for self-determination and justice. It is a sobering reminder that the liberation struggle must also include a commitment to rooting out the very corruption and marginalization that people rose against. Oh well, we head on to another report of concern before going on to the African scene. We see that still in Ambazonia, as always, the Ambazonian State Army ever actively protecting its territory. We see a shooting unfolding at Hospital Roundabout in Bamenda at about 3 p.m. yesterday, Wednesday, April 9, 2025, resulting in the death of one Colonial uniformed officer and injuring another. These 2 La Republique du Cameroon uniformed officers sustained gunshot wounds at their usual extortion points at Hospital Roundabout in Bamenda. Reports indicate that one of them, Yaji Paul, working with the Colonial Central Police Station, died on the spot, while the second suffered serious injuries. Local reports hold that the attack was carried out by a suspected Ambazonian State Army, who ambushed a mixed Colonial extortion post stationed in front of the regional delegation of public health located at the busy hospital roundabout in Bamenda. According to eyewitness, we heard heavy gunshots and saw people running in all directions. This was a shop owner nearby who voted for anonymity. They said it was chaotic. Eyewitness reports it was chaotic. Later, they saw Colonial military vehicles arriving at the scene. While the location of the incident and its busy nature suggest the attack was targeted and thoroughly executed against the Colonial police officers. The extortion post, which included members of different Colonial security units, is known for squeezing money from road users in the name of control. The mixed Colonial patrols are common in Bamenda, a city that has seen repeated confrontations between the Ambazonian State Army and the La Republic Colonial Army in recent years. Now, this attack further adds to a series of violent events in the Midland zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, one of the epicenters of the war in Ambazonia. Well, as the Ambazonian State Army stepped up their game to end all La Republic colonial grievances, we hope the Ambazonian war comes to an end, a just end for all Ambazonians. And with that, all reports on the home front, we head on to the global scene. Coming up next, African News. On the African scene, Algeria's decision to ban flights to and from Mali following repeated airspace violations introduces a complex dynamics to the region. While the move is intended to assert Algeria's sovereignty, it could also serve as a strategic maneuver. We see that for Algeria, this action sends a strong message about its commitment to border security and national interest. It might also pressure Mali to address the airspace violations, potentially leading to improved relations in the future. Mali, on the other hand, could use this as an opportunity to reassess its own aviation protocols and strengthen its diplomatic ties with other regional partners. The ban might also indirectly encourage the development of alternative trade routes benefiting other countries in the area. But then on the flip side, we see the most immediate disadvantage being the disruption to regional travel and trade, which could hinder economic activity and isolate Mali further, exacerbating its existing challenges. Algeria might face criticism from international bodies and could see its influence in the region diminished. Mali, already dealing with security issues, might find itself more isolated, which could intensify its internal problems. Other nations in West Africa could also be negatively affected by the airspace ban, facing increase on travel costs and logistical difficulties. Well, ultimately, the implications of the ban is actually far-reaching and will depend on how both Algeria and Mali respond. It highlights the delicate balance between national interest and regional cooperations. And in Kinshasa, we see the city of Kinshasa reeling from a weekend of torrential rains that unleashed catastrophic floodings, claiming the lives of over 30 people and leaving hundreds displaced. Well, navigating the flooded streets on Monday, the scale of the disaster became tragically clear. The Njili River, which snakes through the city of approximately 17 million, burst its bank on Friday night, inundating homes and businesses alike. Most of the fatalities, according to officials, resulted from collapsing walls, a grim testament to the force of the flood waters. While the water had receded somewhat by Monday morning, many access roads remain impassable, crippling traffic and hampering rescue efforts. The air hung heavy with the smell of mud and despair. Well, still on the African scene, we see that away from the Kinshasa flood, Somalia seems to be having another issue of war outbreaks. We see the Somali armed forces, in collaboration with allied local militias and supported by United States airstrikes, has launched a significant offensive against Al-Shabaab militants in Shabelle region. Operations are concentrated in areas including Runigud, Gulain Silkali Ahmed in Middle Shabelle, and Bulobird and Jalax in Hiran. On April 9th, intense clash in the Aburi area of Boulevard district resulted in the deaths of 53 Somali soldiers, including Asad Osman Afra, commander of the Danab Brigade, with an additional 87 soldiers injured. The escalation highlights the ongoing struggle to stabilize Somalia and the substantial human cost involved. We'll get to the details of all this in our subsequent bulletins, but for now, we'll head on to the global reports. Still on the foreign scene, Ukrainian forces have captured 2 Chinese nationals fighting for the Russian army in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk region. President Volodymyr Zelensky said, "Intelligence suggests the number of Chinese soldiers in Russia's army is much higher than 2. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha condemned Russia's involvement of Chinese citizens in its war against Ukraine, questioning China's declared stance for peace. China's charge the affairs in Kyiv was summoned for an explanation. Meanwhile, Zelensky shared a video on social media showing one of the alleged Chinese captives in handcuffs, speaking Mandarin Chinese and describing a recent battle. An investigation is underway, with the captives currently in Ukraine Security Service custody. French newspaper Le Monde previously reported around 40 Chinese individuals claiming to have signed up with the Russian army on TikTok's sister app Douyin. North Korea has sent thousands of troops to aid Russia's war efforts against Ukraine. Russia and China are close allies, but China has attempted to present itself as a neutral party in the conflict, denying military equipment supplies. Russia's numerical advantage has obviously been a key factor in the war, with reports of meat grinder tactics. Well, that is all on Undaunted tonight. But before we go, let's get the recap of Undaunted tonight. On Undaunted tonight, we saw that tensions and fear continue to deepen in not just Menchum, but the entire Ambazonia as delegates continue to be held in captive. Community outrage in Bokwai village over allegations of sexual abuse by a purported leader. And Hailstorm devastating farmlands in the heart of Ambazonia, Ambazonia's long-standing livelihood. Extortion rocking Nkwen as we see its Colonial quarterhead bleeding farmers dry. We also saw a La Republique police officer on a live with another wounded in gunfire exchange at hospital roundabout only yesterday, April 9th. And on the African scene, we saw Algeria banning flights to Mali amid rising tensions, with Somalia still having its war. Well, more on the global scene, we see Ukraine capturing 2 Chinese nationals, 2 purported Chinese nationals fighting for Russia. And that is all on Undaunted News tonight, bringing into the news untold stories. Until next time, we'll leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.